everyone, Suzanne here. I hope you're all well and welcome to Sew Custom. Today's video is going to be one cami pattern 5 ways. So if you're interested in seeing that, then let's get started. So one of my goals this month was to try and draft a super basic camisole pattern. So I have managed to do that this month, and I liked the pattern so much, it was super quick to make up, that I thought I would have a go at some of the hacks that I had mentioned in my plans video. So I mentioned in that video that I had a ton of hacks that I wanted to try out, and this month I've tried out 5, and I thought it might be useful to show those 5 hacks for those of you that have a camisole pattern and are wanting to give it a bit of a refresh or an update or whatever. It might give some ideas. So I'll start with the basic pattern and then work my way through the 5 hacks. So number 1 is this one. So this is made up in a nice and light and floaty fabric, 100% viscose fabric that I think I got from the Fabric Room. I'll leave all the details linked below, but this is my base pattern. So it's super basic, as I mentioned, just a couple of straps, V at the front, V at the back, nice and floaty at the bottom, and then there's a facing inside. I'll pop some pictures in just to let you see the full design. So as I say, super basic. The front and back are both cut on the fold. The seams are French seamed on both the facing and the bodice itself. The hems I have just rolled under, sewed a little narrow hem, and then rolled under again and sewed another narrow hem. That seemed to work pretty well in this viscose fabric. I did the same hem on the facing and then just popped in the straps and joined the whole thing together along with some understitching to keep everything nicely underneath. And that's it. So that is my basic pattern. And then the first hack that I attempted this month was the layered cami. I've already filmed a tutorial on the making of that cami, so if you haven't seen that, I shall link it down below. I'm wearing that one today. That one has got the most wear over this past couple of weeks, and so I'll not talk too much about it, but I'll just pop a couple of pictures in just to let you see if you haven't seen that video. So this one is made from the same base pattern as are all of these. All I did was copied the pattern front and back and then chopped off about 2 inches from the hem of one of those pieces. So I ended up having a bodice front, a bodice back, an overlay front and an overlay back. And as I say, the overlay was a little bit shorter than the bodice itself. Construction wise, it's constructed in exactly the same way as the base pattern. So I've just treated the bodice piece as a facing really. So the side seams are French seamed. I've understitched at the neckline when I joined the whole thing up. And the only thing I did differently on this one is add a rolled hem that I sewed up on the overlocker. This was the first time I'd used this function on the overlocker and I absolutely love it. And I loved it so much that that brings me on to my hack number 2, which is this one. So this is a mad girly version of the camisole top. So for this one, same again, same base pattern, but I added a couple of flounces the whole way around the neckline, both front and back. And then I extended that to come out across my arm here. Again, I'll pop some pictures in. So those of you that follow me on Instagram will have already seen this one. But for this one, same construction again. So I French seamed the sides. And then for the flounces around the neckline, this was quite good actually because I didn't have to put a facing or anything in this one. So all I did was I had my bodice piece sandwiched in between the 2 flounces. So I had the smaller flounce on the inside and the larger flounce on the outside. And then when I had attached that the whole way around, both front and back neckline and across the arm, I was able to fold the smaller flounce to the outside then. I left a couple of gaps for the straps, both front and back, and just threaded those through at the end. Top stitched the whole lot, so the whole way around the neckline and across the top of the arms, and that meant that I didn't have to put a facing in, so that was really good. And to finish off the seams of the underarm, I just popped in some bias tape. And then to finish off the hems on the flounces and the bodice itself, I used the rolled hem function on the overlocker again, but this time I thought I would try out a coloured thread. So the fabric has some red in it and I thought it would be really nice to highlight that red and bring it out a little bit more in the fabric by using a red thread. And I really love how that has turned out. So I do love this version. I love how it sits across the shoulder. I love the double flounce. I love the width of the flounce. I think it's perfect in balance with the length. I love the fabric. And this fabric, by the way, was from the Textile Centre. It was super inexpensive. And it's a chiffon fabric, which I don't really like a chiffon fabric, the feel of it against the skin. But this is not like any chiffon fabric I've felt before. It is super soft. It's a bit like powder feeling against the skin. It's hard to describe, but I really like it. So that's that one anyway. So that is my hack number 2. And then for my hack number 3, I thought I would make some sort of a button-up version. So this was the first one that I came up with. So as I say, button-up. And then I thought I would do a bit of a peplum detail on the bottom. So I did a bit of a ruffled peplum. So I'll pop some pictures in to let you see a little bit closer and just chat you through the design of this one. So the starting point for this one was also the basic pattern. And instead of cutting the front and back on the fold, I just cut the back on the fold, and the front I just cut 2 pieces, giving myself an extra 1 centimetre seam allowance on them. I fully lined the bodice of this one, French seamed the side seams, and then for the ruffle on the bottom, all I did was I cut the bodice pattern, both the front and the back, at the waistline, and then the hem piece that I had separated, I just doubled the width of that, and that gave me this amount of ruffle, which I think is just right for this design, so I was really pleased with that. As I mentioned, this one is fully lined, so to close up the bodice on the inside, I just hand stitched the lining to the top of the ruffle, which gave a really nice clean finish inside. For the hem of the ruffle, I used the rolled hem function again on the overlocker. Love that. The same little straps. And then for the button loops, I just took a thin strip of fabric, folded it down, sewed it as if I was sewing a strap, turned the whole thing in the right way, and then cut it into 6 to give me 6 little loops. I attached those in between the front bodice and the lining to keep it all nice and clean inside, and they then became my button loops. The buttons themselves are self-covered buttons, just really standard self-covered buttons. I added a modesty strip to one side of one of the fronts, sandwiched it in between the lining and the front bodice, and that way if I had any gaping or anything at the front, nothing would show. So that worked pretty well, so I was really happy with that. Understitched as usual, but really like how it turned out. So that's that one. So that is my hack number 3. And my hack number 4, Angela is wearing today. And this one and 2 others are my favourites out of all the hacks I've done. So this one is just a little button-up cami again, but I just super love this one. So I'll pop some pictures in and chat you through the design of this one. So this one again, exactly the same starting point. I did the same thing as I'd done in the previous little white ruffle one, in that I separated the hem piece from the bodice at the waistline. I then popped in a couple of box pleats on the front and 2 box pleats on the back at that hem piece, and really love how that turned out. And then for the bodice itself, I gave myself a button placket, added 6 little black buttons, just super plain and simple black buttons, which I really like on this design. I French seamed the sides, and instead of fully lining this one, I wanted this to be really nice and flowy, so instead of fully lining it, I popped in just a really standard facing. So I drafted a new facing for this design, and it's just about 5 centimetres or so deep the whole way around, so it's a neckline and armhole facing. I made it up in this voile fabric, which seemed to match the chiffon of the outer in terms of weight, so that was a really good choice. I'm super pleased with that. The straps are exactly the same as on all the other versions. And for the hem of both the facing and the bodice itself, I did just small narrow hems, so the same thing as I had done on the basic pattern. So I just turned over a narrow hem, stitched it, pressed that down, turned it over again, stitched it, and that just gives a super neat finish on the inside and out, which I really like. So I used this rather gorgeous fabric, again from the Textile Centre. It's one of those really buttery soft chiffons, and I just really like the design of this one. I love this one. Absolutely love it. So I'm definitely going to make this up again. I think this is going to be one of those standard ones that I make up year after year. So love that one. So that is my hack number 4. And then for my hack number 5 and my final hack, I made this little number, which is another ruffly version, but a little bit different to the previous one. So this design was inspired by a little top I had seen maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago in the Burda magazine. And I just really liked this ruffle detail at the front and how it went into a V, and it was all sewn in to a centre seam at the front, and I thought I would try and recreate that on a cami pattern, and this turned out to be super easy, super quick to do. So again, I'll pop some pictures in and chat you through the design. So for this one, I cut the back on the fold just the same as the basic pattern, and for the front piece I gave myself a 1 centimetre seam allowance at the centre front instead of cutting it on the fold. And for the flounce at the front, I just measured from the top of the arm across the top of the strap, down the neckline, and then down about 4 inches the centre front seam. I then cut myself a strip of paper, just bog standard parcel paper, and then used the method that I had used in my How I Create a Flounce video, that same method, the slash and spread method, in order to make that pattern piece more of a flounce. So I ended up having a bit of a circular pattern piece. I just curved off the edges, cut myself 2 pieces for each side of the neckline, and then attached those to each of my front pieces separately, and then joined everything up at the centre front. I cut myself a small facing, the same facing that I had used in my previous version, the little peplum one with the box pleats, popped it on, did the same understitching that I'd done on all previous versions, popped on the same straps, and for the hems of both the flounce and the bodice itself, I used the rolled hem function on the overlocker. So I really love this version. I've worn this out this week with a pair of black tailored trousers, and it just looks really nice together. So love this one. So this fabric, it was from the Textile Centre. It's exactly the same as the white crepe-like fabric that I had used in my layered version. Just this one's in a black colourway. But I think the whole design of this would be beautiful made up in some sort of a silk. So I do have some silks in my stash, or silk-like fabric, that I'm going to try this design on. So I'm definitely making this one again. But that's it. So that is my hack number 5 and my final hack for this video. So my hope for this video is that it gives some ideas of different sort of design elements that you could use for any cami pattern that you have, in order to give it a bit of an update or a refresh. So I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you've not yet subscribed, please do, and I shall see you guys in my next one. Until then, I hope you have a fantastic few days. Bye folks!